Richard is 52. He chairs the investment committee of a regional infrastructure fund, serves on 2 boards, and has spent 3 decades building a reputation that, within his professional sphere, is essentially unassailable. He is the most capable person in every room he enters. He knows this, and it is not vanity. It is the operational conclusion of long experience. When things go wrong in his organizations, Richard is the person people call. He is always useful. He is never useless. He has not surprised himself in 6 years. This is his own observation, made recently in an unusually candid moment with a colleague who had asked, in passing, over dinner, when he had last done something he was uncertain about. Richard had paused. He genuinely could not answer. His children, who are 19 and 22, describe their father as reliable. They say it with affection. It is also the only adjective they reach for. His wife uses the same word. It appears in performance reviews, in the recommendations written about him, in the way his name comes up in conversations he is not part of. Reliable. Richard has achieved the thing many people spend careers working toward: complete predictability in the positive register. It feels, at 52, like a room with no windows. He has not pursued an affair. He has not made a dramatic professional pivot. He has not done any of the things that would make his situation legible as a crisis. The crisis Richard is experiencing is not visible from the outside because it is not an event. It is an absence, the slow withdrawal of something from a life that, by every external measure, is in full operation. This is educational content exploring Jungian psychology. It is not a substitute for professional mental health support. If you are struggling, please seek qualified help. The case presented is entirely fictional, constructed to illustrate a psychological concept. The senex-puer polarity is not a concept Jung systematized in a single text. It emerged from multiple places in his work, from his writing on the old wise man archetype in the collected works, from his clinical observations on the second half of life, from his analyses of mythological and alchemical material, and was subsequently developed with great precision by James Hillman, whose essay Senex and Puer, collected in the volume Puer Papers, remains one of the most penetrating treatments of the subject in Jungian literature. The senex, Latin for old man, is an archetypal principle, not a personality type or an age category. In Jungian usage, an archetype is a structural pattern of the collective unconscious, an inherited form that organizes psychological experience around a specific set of themes and modes. The senex archetype organizes psychological experience around the themes of order, limitation, structure, authority, tradition, the long view, heaviness, and duration. These are not pejorative terms. The senex, in its positive form, is wisdom, the capacity to hold the long view, to bear limitation without collapsing, to provide reliable structure in conditions of uncertainty. The puer archetype, as explored in the previous video in this series, organizes psychological experience around the opposite themes: spontaneity, possibility, lightness, vision, the new, the not yet formed, the refusal of limitation. In its positive form, the puer is creative vitality, the capacity to see beyond the current form to what has not yet been realized. In mature psychological development, these two principles exist in what Hillman called creative tension, neither eliminating the other, each providing what the other cannot. The senex provides the container within which the puer's energy can become something. The puer provides the energy that prevents the senex from becoming mere rigidity. The problem in Richard's case, and it is a problem with a specific clinical description, is the complete predominance of the senex at the expense of the puer. The senex in its negative form, as Hillman analyzes it, and as Hollis extends in Under Saturn's Shadow, becomes what it consumes: structure that devours the new, authority that cannot tolerate uncertainty, experience that has calcified from genuine wisdom into defended convention. The negative senex does not produce stability. It produces stagnation dressed as stability. Richard has not become cruel or authoritarian in any recognizable sense. The negative senex does not always manifest dramatically. Its more common presentation in high-functioning professionals is simply the condition Richard named: the disappearance of surprise, the inability to generate genuine uncertainty, the experience of competence as a kind of enclosure. James Hillman's analysis of the senex-puer polarity is one of the most psychologically sophisticated treatments of the midlife authority figure in analytical literature, and it is worth following carefully. Hillman argues that the senex and puer are not simply opposed archetypes that must be balanced in some mechanical way. They are aspects of a single archetype, the senex-puer conjunction, that appear to be opposites but are in fact two poles of the same psychological reality. This is a crucial distinction. It means that when the senex completely dominates, the puer does not disappear. It goes into the shadow of the senex. And in the shadow of the senex, the puer takes on the coloring of everything the senex has suppressed. It becomes volatile, irresponsible, destructive, the opposite of its constructive form. This is the mechanism that explains what Hollis, in Under Saturn's Shadow, calls the catastrophic escapes of midlife. The affair, the sudden career abandonment, the motorcycles, the dramatic and apparently inexplicable break with the stable life. These are not random failures of character in people who should have known better. They are the puer erupting from the shadow of the senex with the force that has accumulated from years of suppression. The man who conducts himself with complete reliability for 3 decades and then, at 54, obliterates his marriage with behavior that is inexplicable to everyone including himself. That is, in Jungian terms, the shadow puer finally breaking through the senex's defenses. Richard has not reached that point. But the trajectory has a logic, and understanding the logic is the only thing that makes the eventual juncture comprehensible rather than simply catastrophic. What has happened to Richard's access to the puer dimension is worth examining in its developmental history. At 30, the combination of puer energy and emerging senex structure was genuinely creative. He was building something, an investment track record, a professional reputation, a family, and the building drew on both principles, the vision and ambition of the puer and the discipline and endurance of the senex. The combination was generative. It produced results. But the results, over time, created their own gravitational field. Success in Richard's domain rewards the senex qualities almost exclusively: consistency, predictability, reliable judgment, the management of risk. The puer qualities, the unexpected question, the disruptive idea, the willingness to be uncertain publicly, are, in the environment of a senior investment committee chair, professionally penalized. The environment selected for one pole of the archetype and against the other over 30 years. The senex became the dominant mode not through psychological pathology, but through the consistent reinforcement of an environment that could use the senex and had no place for the puer. Edward Edinger, in Ego and Archetype, discusses a related phenomenon: the tendency of ego development to stabilize around a dominant archetypal mode, and then to defend that mode as the territory of the actual self. Richard does not experience the senex as a role. He experiences it as what he is. The reliable judgment, the long view, the management of uncertainty through experience. These feel like Richard. The puer qualities, the spontaneous response, the genuine surprise, the willingness to not know, have been absent long enough that they now feel foreign. Not suppressed, just gone. They are not gone. They are in the shadow. And Jung was clear, across the collected works, that what is in the shadow does not reduce in force over time. Suppression does not dissolve psychic content. It stores it. The developmental question for Richard at 52 is not how to become more spontaneous, a prescription that would simply embarrass him and miss the point. It is a more fundamental question about the relationship between his conscious identity and the totality of what he is. The senex has been a useful servant and has become, as Hollis puts it, a governor that has no mechanism for releasing the governed. In Jung's framework, what interrupts this dynamic is rarely comfortable. The most common catalysts are loss, the death of a parent, the departure of the last child, the end of the professional career that the senex has organized, or genuine encounter, a relationship, a work of art, an experience that cannot be managed by reliable judgment and insists on something else. These encounters do not arrive on schedule, but the psyche tends to create the conditions for them, and the person who has built a sufficiently total defense against them will tend to find that the defense, eventually, generates its own undoing. Return to Richard. He chairs committees, serves on boards, and is called when things go wrong. He has not surprised himself in 6 years. These two facts are not coincidental. They are the same fact seen from two directions. The word reliable, which his family and colleagues reach for instinctively, is accurate and devastating in equal measure. Reliable means predictable. Reliable means already known. Reliable means that the person in front of you will not present you with anything you have not already factored into your understanding of them. For a professional managing complex systems, this is a profound asset. For a psyche that requires something beyond the reiteration of what it already knows, for a person in whom some dimension of genuine self-development is still trying to occur, reliable is an obituary written while the subject is still in the room. The children who describe their father as reliable are not offering a critique. They are giving a precise account. They have never seen Richard be uncertain. They have never witnessed the experience of their father not knowing what to do. This means they have never seen him genuinely vulnerable, genuinely exposed, genuinely in the process of encountering something he could not manage in advance. They have seen his competence. They have not met the person behind it. This gap between the reliable public self and whatever remains on the interior is the Senex's primary product in its negative form. The archetype's investment in the maintenance of authority is so complete that genuine encounter becomes impossible. Richard cannot be surprised because surprise would require a momentary suspension of the reliable position, a moment in which he does not already know. That moment is, to the entrenched Senex, a form of danger. The Jungian response to this situation is not a prescription for spontaneity or play, though those words will sometimes be used in summaries of this concept. It is a more precise invitation to develop a relationship with the shadow pure, not to become the pure, not to abandon the genuine wisdom the Senex has accumulated, but to allow the pure's dimension to exist in consciousness rather than only in the unconscious, where it builds pressure and eventually erupts. For Richard, this might look like very small things. It might look like tolerating, in a meeting, the moment when he genuinely does not know rather than managing it immediately into the frame of experience. It might look like an encounter with a creative work, a piece of music, a text, a film, that does not fit into his existing categories and allowing it not to fit rather than either mastering it or dismissing it. It might look like being wrong about something and not restoring the position immediately. None of these are dramatic. None of them would be visible to the children who find him reliable, at least not at first. What they would do, gradually, is create a small opening in the Senex's total management of his inner life, a narrow window through which something that has been waiting for 52 years might begin, cautiously, to move. One might ask, as a genuine question about one's own life, whether any dimension of one's character that was once generative has become, over time, primarily defensive. Not in the sense of defending against others, but in the sense of defending against the self's own other dimensions. Whether the qualities that have been most rewarded, the reliability, the competence, the long view, have, in the process of being cultivated and rewarded, come to occupy the entire available psychological space. One might also consider the word that others most reliably use to describe one. Not the most flattering word. That is a different question. The most consistent word. The one that appears across contexts, from different people, with a kind of inevitability. That word is often the name of the dominant archetype. It is worth asking whether the dominant archetype has a counterpart, and whether that counterpart has anywhere to go. The cultural dimension of the Senex predominance is specific to the professional environments that reward it most completely. Law, finance, medicine, senior management, institutional leadership. These are domains that have been, for generations, organized around the Senex virtues: consistency, authority, reliable judgment, accumulated experience. They are also domains with the highest rates of what clinicians sometimes call midlife restructuring, the sudden and apparently inexplicable abandonment of the life that was working. Hillman's analysis suggests that this is not coincidental. The professions that most completely reward the Senex dimension also most completely suppress the pure, and the suppression, over the decades of a successful career, builds the conditions for the eventual eruption that observers call a crisis, and that Jungian analysis would identify as a delayed developmental event. The person who never had occasion to access the pure dimension within the structure of their career will eventually produce it outside the structure, often in ways that are costly and disorienting to everyone involved. The alternative to the eruption is not the avoidance of the pure. It is the development of a conscious relationship with it, an interior life that has enough room for both principles, that has learned to hold the tension between authority and spontaneity, between the long view and the present moment, between the reliable known and the genuinely uncertain. Richard is 52 and reliable, and the reliability he has built is a genuine achievement. The question his psychology is quietly raising is not whether he should dismantle what he has built. It is whether he can afford to keep building the same thing for the next 30 years, and more precisely, whether there is enough of the original person left beneath the reliable surface to have an opinion about that question. Hillman's formulation is worth carrying away. The senex and puer are not enemies. They are the two halves of a single archetype, and the vitality of either depends on its relationship with the other. The reliable man who has lost access to the uncertain one is not a success story that has reached its natural conclusion. He is a story in which a significant chapter has not yet been written. This is educational content exploring Jungian psychology. It is not a substitute for professional mental health support. If you are struggling, please seek qualified help. The Shadow Work PDF, 5 Questions to Begin, is available through the link in the description. Subscribe if you want to continue exploring these concepts. The next questions are not easier than this one.